What's going on, everybody? Phantom139 here, and welcome back to my Thoughts series on Destiny 2. This is my State of Destiny 2 series. After a long, extended season, we've now reached the Beyond Light release for Destiny 2, kickstarting the brand new Era of Darkness storyline that Bungie has decided to place us on. So, how is this first chapter of the storyline? Well, we're going to talk about the good and the bad in today's video. Just as a quick reminder, I'm not doing any more recaps. There's just going to be a little title card at the top if you want to see the previous video. And that's going to do it for the intro, so let's jump right into it. So I'm going to start today by talking about the Beyond Light release itself and give my overall thoughts on how things went for the campaign and post-campaign experience. In terms of the story, I thought it was finally executed in a great manner. Finally felt like the story threads were all connected in a way that led from one aspect to the next. We still had many questions, an issue I tie to the long-standing history of expansion stories needing to answer old threads. However, things were executed so much better this time around. Aramis felt like a good story villain in the sense that there was a backstory and meaning behind her plot, and how we interacted with this villain in the campaign drove the narrative forward. This is what I'd love to see continued moving forward. I also want to thank Bungie for not dropping our stasis subclasses on us by the second campaign mission, Red War. I really enjoyed that it was a journey to unlock stasis this time around, also making it so that you needed to be on a specific step of your journey to be able to access areas of Europa. That was also a great touch, and one that I hope Bungie continues on with moving forward. Speaking of stasis, I have no issues with it in PvP, unlike some of the complainers, and I really like it in PvE. It throws a wrench into the established sandbox and mixes things up for a much-needed refreshment. If this is what we can expect from other Darkness subclasses, go crazy, Bungie. This is great. One thing I did not appreciate, however, was the very quick hit to Shadebinders. I do feel that it was overtuned, especially in the melee department, but thankfully it appears as if these changes will be fixed and that hotfixes for stasis are happening much more rapidly. A change to Bungie's engine allows them to actually fix things more quickly, and that was a great thing. I also really like the new aspect and fragment system. This is a great answer to the subclass system that we got with Destiny 2 Vanilla, and one that I hope Bungie extends to the light subclasses next year, so that we just get rid of this terrible mistake that was the attunements and paths that we had with Destiny 2's vanilla release, the final aspect of bad changes that should be completely undone. Speaking on the campaign side of things, the length on my first character was done in about 5.5 hours, including server issues on day one. Why this is still happening like this, I can't really explain anymore. In terms of the length, it still feels short for a $40 campaign expansion that did not provide an in-game dungeon content, and I really feel as if Bungie should make their campaign expansions a bit more lengthy next time around, especially seeing as we're about to get into some really big key villains of the Destiny franchise. Now, in regards to the post-campaign, the Born in Darkness quest, I'd much rather these be account-based instead of character-based, especially seeing as there was a pretty lengthy amount of busy work required for each step. I would have said to keep the aspects as character-based quests, but leave the unlocking of core class abilities as account-based, especially seeing as these abilities were shared between all of the classes. In terms of the new destination, Europa, it is a very beautiful destination. There's lots of nooks and crannies to explore, and so much more liveliness to it due to the dynamic weather system. I do share in the community feedback of a need for a fast travel point in Eventide, however, so Bungie, make it happen. The raid-based modification hit with a Deepstone Crypt, similar to how the Dreaming City evolved once Last Wish was completed. However, I do wish that it would land with area-based expansions as well. The big story from the raid, and we'll talk about the raid later, was that it needed to be defended now that it was open to the whole world. So why can't we actually travel to the raid areas in the patrol and actually do said defending? Empire hunts, they are a nice update to nightmare hunts. However, I feel that some pre-work objectives need a bit of a workover. Looking at you, 25 precision fallen kills and 1 life in Cadmus Ridge. By the way, most of the enemies in Cadmus Ridge, Shanks. Yeah, I do like the new exotic weapons, but they really feel safe. And in the era where a huge amount of our arsenal was just wiped out by sunsetting, more on this later, I feel playing safe was not the right call to make at this time. I wanted to be wowed by the exotics. Now, they are unique, but they didn't really sate the interest for new powerful weaponry. So I really hope Bungie takes a deeper look at this next time. Optional difficulty lost sectors for the new exotic armor pieces was a nice little touch. However, I think locking them to solo only is a bit rough. Perhaps leave solo only for 1250, but allow group completions of 1280 to also grant a chance for these new exotics, just to give some players who maybe don't have the skill level a chance to actually get there. All in all, I'd give Beyond Light a solid 8 out of 10 on my rating scale for DLCs. There's still plenty of little nitpicky stuff in the game that was not addressed, but for the most part, Bungie did a pretty good job this time around, especially given the constraints they were working with. Next up, we're going to talk about Season 12, Season of the Hunt. This kicked off a week following the release of Beyond Light, and we were sent to the moon for, well, spoiler warning, an emergency mission to aid Osiris, whose ghost, Segura, was slain by the High Celerant of Xivu Arath. Story-wise, I really wish this moment would have been cutscene based and not a lore drop kind of revelation. I get the whole situation of what's going on, but let's be honest, it would have been a much more powerful story-based delivery. In terms of the seasonal activity, Wrathborn hunts, not Wraithborn, seriously, who calls it that? Players are given a lure and charge it in core activities or in patrols on days when the bonus allows for it. My direct feedback here is that while Bungie should focus more on the core, this focus shouldn't mean forcing players to engage with the core to be able to play the seasonal activity. It should be an option, not the only way forward. Also, I'm not a big fan of the RNG slot roll and what you get as your lure reward. I would have much rather had a system that built on the Umbral engrams we had from the previous system, with all options available to target. Perhaps this could have been a lure upgrade. In terms of the activity itself, the hunts, they are pretty short and a source of disappointment, unfortunately. I would have liked them to be about the length of maybe half of a story mission with multiple enemy rooms leading up to the fight, and using more than one area for each target. I get that there's likely more story to come later in the season, but given what we got from seasons last year, this really isn't a good start to year 4. Now, the Hawkmoon quest, that was a nice change of pace for exotic quests, one that I hope continues moving forward, but that's really about the only shining spot of the season so far. There's no secrets, no new dungeons, no in-game pursuits from this season so far either that have been discovered, so this is really shaping up to be another season of the Undying, where the season is held up by the expansion alone. Next up, we're going to talk about the new raid, Deepstone Crypt. From the perspective of the execution of the raid team, I give huge props to the team for once again knocking it out of the park in regards to making an environmentally amazing piece of content. You guys literally outdid yourselves this time. Well done. The mechanics were, for the most part, bug-free. I actually have not encountered any bugs myself yet, so that's another great thing. Not subject to any strange issues, and the encounters feel like a perfect flow from one to the next, building on each of the previous encounters. The new gear is absolutely aesthetically amazing, and I love the fact that new raid perks on the weapons exist, so we have raid-specific perks back again. Although I really feel as if raid gear deserves to have intrinsic perks or gear set bonuses for wearing multiple pieces at this point in time. My one piece of big criticism for the weapons is that they did not get the adept weapon treatment, and seeing as this is the pinnacle of PvE content, they absolutely needed to have that extra oomph factor, but we'll get back to my take on this a little shortly. Also, I am not a fan of the fact that we went back to RNG on the raid exotic, especially given the stories in the community of really bad luck. And speaking of bad luck, Bungie, fix your godforsaken RNG. Regards to waiting towards new items, please. In 6 runs, I got 9 shotguns. Come on. I want new stuff, not shotguns. Also, speaking of the raid exotic, did you disable the progressive increasing RNG on this? Because I've completed the raid 12 times without seeing it yet, which on the old system would have been almost 30% by now. This is a big mistake if you did, so please put it back in. Also, you have the whole buy your reward chest at the end, so why isn't the exotic in there for the full stack limit of 240 spoils like the other raid exotics? This would make a great reason to actually go and farm the raid if you could actually just buy the exotic and not have to worry about being stuck with terrible RNG. I'd actually enjoy helping new players do the raid at that point if I knew I could just work my way to the weapon. So now we have to talk about more of a major issue with raids in general, which I would call the elephant in the room. And that is the point I'm going to be critical about for pretty much every raid, and that is the day one in contest mode experience. I'm just going to directly target a particular streamer here and call you out directly as being absolutely wrong. Everyone knows about what Glad said. The day one emblem should not be exclusive just because you think a raid is too easy. And honestly, there never should have been a day one emblem to begin with. I've always been against this whole point of time limited emblems. Many teams, mine included, struggled with the raid because of the contest modifier that you and your streamer friends pushed Bungie so hardly to introduce. This very mode is now killing the experience of the day one raid for a large majority of the community because even Bungie cannot tune this correctly. The second encounter of the raid was severely overtuned for contest mode, but severely undertuned for normal mode. Nothing but pure perfection of the execution on day one would get a group past the encounter, while the rest of the raid was effectively a cakewalk. Moving forward, Bungie really needs to spend much more time with each encounter to ensure that some leeway is allotted. While executing mechanics should be the key to success, enforcing specific loadouts with some items that were no longer attainable should never be used in a day one raid. Additionally, there is a clear disparity of day one clears between PC and consoles. Raids need to be tested on all platforms to ensure that the same experience is felt on all platforms. I severely disagree with awarding a time-limited emblem for a mode that is only enabled on the first day. This is just fueling a level of elitism in the community that has no place in the game. I will reiterate that I feel contest mode needs a complete overhaul. My recommended changes are that contests should be enabled for the initial race, just to make the race fair. However, as soon as a team clears the raid, the modifier should be deactivated for teams that are now entering the raid. Any team that is still in the raid would retain the contest modifier, and they would be awarded the contest mode emblem if they clear it. Contest mode then goes away for a couple weeks to give some prestige to the teams that do clear it with the modifier, but then returns as an optional difficulty modifier. Think of it as the brand new hard mode. Players could then clear this new contest mode to obtain the emblem and perhaps give it an extra drop or two every week. And honestly, when I mentioned adept weapons earlier, why don't just make contest mode award adept raid weapons? As I mentioned earlier, raiding is the pinnacle activity of the game. It should offer this level of award. This is something I really feel needs to go, and it needs to go immediately. When a huge number of players are calling out a streamer on the Reddit and their own post, you know it's wrong, Bungie. This was a problem that was created by the streamers. This is a problem that you need to put to bed. It is wrong, and I honestly feel that it should just be stripped from the game at this point. Just make the game about earning rewards at the pace that players are capable of doing so, if they are indeed capable of doing so. That's all I've got on the raid, so let's actually switch gears and talk about some good things now. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about quality of life changes that Bungie made with Beyond Light. And I want to basically call out Bungie here and give them props for all the great things that happened in Beyond Light. First, fast travel points were now changed so you can actually fast travel during patrols. This is a great thing that allows groups and patrol activities to be more explorative and have more freedom while they're actually playing patrol. Great big thumbs up here. Also, speaking of patrols, they are no longer region locked. This is a great change. It's nice to be able to pick up a patrol and then move along with bounties or public events and not have to worry about being in the same area. Ghost mods, big thumbs up to the person who made that. It's great to be able to actually have a cosmetic pleasing ghost and not have to worry about it not having a good perk roll. Now, if you have a ghost you like to use, RP Shell, you can actually use it and put the perks you want on it. Sparrows all having the fast summon perk, that's another great thing. However, maybe give Sparrows the Ghost 2.0 system and treatment in the future? Just a thought. Random powerful drops from core activities. This was a great way to encourage players to continue playing after all powerful drops were exhausted in the first few weeks of the power climb. Not sure if this is completely necessary, but again, it's one of those things I appreciate that Bungie at least made an effort for on the reward side of things. In terms of the new engine changes, I really like that players are able to bounce in and out of fire teams without needing to rejoin a tower instance. This is a great way to streamline group formation and getting your groups actually put together without delays. And the great big thumbs up point here, Bungie. You finally took the feedback on armor mods and elemental affinity. Thank you so much for getting rid of that elemental affinity and weapons. Also, on that same point, enhanced mods being deprecated and repurposed into normal mods, another great big plus, removes a lot of confusion and gives players a bit more flexibility in their builds. More flexibility, great thing. Raid mods having their own slot, that's another great thing. The only piece of feedback I'd give is I think that the costs on raid mods are a bit overtuned right now. I feel like they should be reduced to cost 0 to 2 energy, seeing as they are highly specific, and even when they're highly specific, you need to be in specific cases to be able to use them anymore. I just feel like for the costs that are required on these mods, they aren't really worth slotting at the point. Anti-champion mods on armor. This is a great thing. I feel as if the tests from Season 11's pulse rifle mods went really well, which is why Bungie decided to move forward with this, and I agree. This is something that should continue to be used moving forward. New Light 2.0 was also much better this time. I ran it through on my main character just to give it a spin and see how it went. There were some incomplete aspects. I did notice a few voice lines were missing, so I have to ding you for that there, but for the most part, the experience was much better and actually explained the mechanics of the game so a new player could pick it up. In terms of the Triumph screen, I really liked the rework on it. The organization makes it much more easy to find things. In terms of a few other QOL things I would like to see Bungie hit in the next coming seasons, let's start with the exotic weapons. There's quite a few exotics that are still missing catalysts. I would like to see Bungie fill the list out completely. Just give every exotic weapon a catalyst. It doesn't have to change the behavior of them if you feel like they're already good. Just make sure they have a catalyst so they can all take advantage of the trackers and orbs on multi-kill. In terms of pinnacle drops, I still think RNG on them can be quite oppressive. There really needs to be a slot knockout system introduced in which pinnacle drops hit each slot one by one until all slots are maxed out, then go back to being random. That, or introduce the targeted pinnacle gear system I proposed last year. Armor stats I feel need to be reworked. It can be very disheartening to have 1 to 3 stats sitting on the edge of the next tier, just because you can't find that one piece of gear with those 1 to 2 points higher. I feel as if tiers should just go away and serve as markers, while stats between the two markers can be interpolated based on where your stat value lies. I mentioned 1280s earlier for lost sectors, but I think they need a second look at the rewards. They are found to be the same drop percentage as 1250 for exotics, making them highly irrelevant, and as an in-game activity I would have expected more. Perhaps give them a pinnacle drop. Maybe give it like 3 drops a week and you can choose which days to do it on. Legacy triumphs, I think they should be viewable, not just a marker on the screen showing your score. It can be a nice nostalgia hit to be able to go back and look at your past triumphs in full. Collections screen, it would be nice if there was a button to mark all as seen to stop the constant flashing in the menu and needing to search out the newly found item, especially when redoing an artifact or at the start of a season when a large amount of new items are found. Additionally, it would be nice if the unattainable collection badges that have been vaulted can be hidden from view, similar to how old time-limited triumphs were. Finally, I would like to see some in-game materials have their maximum stack size increased, as there really is no reason to block players from farming materials. In fact, farming should be encouraged to keep players engaged during droughts. These items include Spoils of Conquest, Enhancement Prisms, Ascendant Shards, and Upgrade Modules. Now, before we wrap this video up, I want to hit the largest piece of criticism facing the title right now, and that is how Bungie executed the Destiny Content Vault and Sunsetting combo. To literally no one's surprise, Sunsetting and the Content Vault, the two major changes that hit the game with Beyond Light, and the most contentious in the community, were executed incredibly poorly. Sunsetting wiped out a majority of the game's arsenal in a snap of Bungie's fingers, while the DCV eliminated so many existing endgame pursuits to keep players engaged outside of the weekly routines. Subsequently, we knew in advance that unless Bungie had devoted an incredible amount of resources to reintroducing new versions of every weapon archetype, that many would fall out of parity in existence, to which multiple have now done so. I warned Bungie against this multiple times, but all these two systems are acting to do is accelerate the content drought onset this time around. Players have been and are already running out of new content to play, and without the old in-game content and viable drop sources, players are dropping off the title. Additionally, sunsetting has made Forsaken and Shadowkeep a complete waste of money for anyone to purchase, as the content does not offer any viable gear for progression's sake. This is a response to the yearly base power increase, in which all gear is brought up to the maximum power of the final season of the previous year. This only amplifies the problem. I really feel as if Bungie needs to take a step back and stop moving base power up with each expansion. Instead, just offer players a skip button so they can jump up to said base power, but leave all their old gear alone, such that they can still play the old expansions, or a new light player can jump in and still play the old expansions. But if they want to jump into the new expansion content, they can get the skip button when they buy the new DLC. Honestly, sunsetting is just something that needs to go. The only pieces of gear that really needed adjustment were the old Pinnacle pieces. In all honesty, Bungie should have just used sunsetting to knock out those items, but left everything else alone. Destiny is now a looter game without any loot, and another major issue. This is on Luke Smith's head, folks. This is Bungie's next double primary. I'm tired of writing these huge errors off as nothing, and I'm getting tired of Bungie exhibiting this holier-than-thou attitude when the community clearly knew better in this case. As it pertains to the DCV, I really feel as if the old raids did not need to go. The old destinations still exist for Crucible and Gambit, so those assets are still in the game. I would just reintroduce the old raids as soon as possible, bring back the farmable nature of them, and extend it to all raids. This will inject a bunch of much-needed in-game grind into the game in a time when it's much needed. So what does Bungie need to do next? They've obviously got their work cut out for them, and I'm still needing to list these big points out, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of what we do. I think the biggest change that needs to happen in the short term is a complete removal of sunsetting outside of the old Pinnacle weapons. You can leave the Pinnacle weapons sunset. There was no need to remove every other weapon in the game because they were never a source of any issues. Destiny has become a litter without loot. This needs to be undone. In terms of a longer change, I'd like to see the old raids removed from the DCV. As the Pinnacle piece of PvE content, raids should be immune from the DCV unless asset packing of a destination completely prevents this from happening. Given, however, I know that Leviathan assets are still in Nessus, and Scourge was on Earth, I know this isn't the case. In terms of raids, the big point I brought up in regards to contests of day one is something that needs to be cleaned up, and it needs to be cleaned up now. We know that Vault of Glass is returning later this year, and I would love to see these issues fixed in time for the season that Vault of Glass arrives. Bungie should rework the day one experience as I discussed earlier, adding optional contest modifier to all raids to award additional Pinnacle drops, adept weapons, and the contest emblem on completion. If also possible, I would really like to see Bungie just make contest a required challenge for all of the raid titles. Moving forward, I don't want to see a base power increase for Witch Queen or Lightfall. A skip power button could be added instead, but the leveling experience is just part of the game, and it should be retained for the sake of keeping old campaigns and their destinations relevant. And that's all I've got for today's video. If you've stuck around for this long, thank you very much. Hopefully this feedback gets to the right place so we can fix some of the glaring problems that have come out while building on the success that Beyond Light has brought in. This will be the last of my Destiny videos for a bit. I'm planning for one a couple weeks into February once Season 13 has gone along. If you have any thoughts of your own to share, please share. I'm interested to see what others think on the matter of what we talked about. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.